So yeah, let's get started. So Zaki, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us one thing that you're most excited about, like in the.
Yeah. So, okay. I'm Zaki. So in 2014, there was this little open source project called Tendermint. Jay Kwan came up with this idea of using BFT algorithms for proof of stake. And so I started, he was my friend. I started contributing. Then 2018, 2019, I ran the Cosmos launch, which was like one of the first proof of stake blockchains, one of the first blockchains with slashing. Then I like finished building IBC, launched a DeFi protocol that's based on an app chain called Sommelier. Have this very like large invest and consult business that like invests in a lot of different different stages of founders. We spend a lot of time helping founders. We also advise and consult on things like everything from like engineering and cryptography to go to market and like memes and NFTs and stuff like that for pretty much almost any blockchain you can name. So we've been doing this for quite some time. Tried a lot of different experiments. A lot of things have failed. A lot of things have succeeded. So that's kind of what I've been doing for a long time. The guiding light has been this belief in this app chain thesis, which is a thesis that has both had its successes and its failures. I would still, the like future of the app chain thesis is still somewhat ambiguous after 10 years. Some of the biggest successes have been things like Perpetual's DEXs, like DYDX, which was built on Cosmos, and Hyperliquid, which started out using Tendermint consensus, eventually pivoted to their own consensus layer. But the entire idea of all of these different things that I've worked on, which is everything from like zero knowledge proofs to interoperability frameworks to consensus layers to like app chain building frameworks, all of these pieces is just to give builders a lot of flexibility about what they're going to build. And maybe we could talk a little bit about, but like the reason why this thing keeps coming back is because there are a significant number of app chains in the top 100 assets. Celestia is a great example of this. You see how well Hyperliquid has done. DYDX, has like had its ups and downs, but is still doing a very significant amount of volume. So it's clear that app chains are important. But most builders are probably building a smart contract on a smart contract framework, on a general purpose chain, whether it's Base or Solana or any of the other number of general purpose chains. So it's still a little bit ambiguous, and maybe we can unpack what is the future of app chains.
Awesome. Yeah, so I think in the space, everyone keeps coming up with their own definitions of certain things that they feel like post-confirmation. But yeah, to just set the stage, like how do you define an app chain, and how has it evolved since you started working on it?
Yeah. So I guess when we started this thought process on app chains, we were like, because we started working on this before Ethereum was a thing. Before smart contracts had really taken off. Like smart contracts, unclear if they were going to work. We had Bitcoin. We had things like Namecoin. And you can think of Bitcoin as the first app chain. It was a chain that was like designed around the tokenomics and distribution of a single asset, and payments and some limited smart contract capability around that single asset. And that was the first app chain. But it was clear 10 years ago that if you wanted to have proof of work as your system, you couldn't really have app chains. So you needed to invent BFT, proof of stake consensus, interoperability, so that there would be ways of app chains launching, onboarding liquidity, onboarding users. All of this could be done in a permissionless way. So we had to invent like 8 years of technology basically in order to make all of that possible. What we hypothesized sort of in 2019 when Cosmos launched, that like the life cycle of applications would be, you launch an application on a general purpose chain, you find product market fit, you find users, who knows what it will be, but then as you want scale, control, value accrual, decentralization, these are the levers that you could pull. Now we have one example of this happening in a practical way, which is DYDX. DYDX was launched initially as a smart contract on Ethereum, then became a roll-up app chain using Starkware technology, then it became a Cosmos app chain. And that was kind of, DYDX was kind of following the story that we had laid out. But then you have something like Hyperliquid. There's no, they start out building an app chain, and they've just day zero app chain. You have things like Celestia. The vision took 5 years to build and was built on top of the Cosmos app chain framework. But never really had any could never have been built any other way other than by building an app chain. So it's really hard to know at this point, but maybe the definition of an app chain is basically a chain which has a very opinionated use case baked into the chain. There is some application that is running at a higher level of integration into the core consensus and everything, that even if you have a smart contract framework and you deploy applications, they don't run with the same level of priority. So on Hyperliquid, there's a built-in perpetuals order book. Even though they're going to launch an EVM, the perpetuals order book has special assigned block space, assigned consensus behavior. It's not just okay, everything is a generic EVM app. Whereas if you take something like Ethereum-based Solana, they treat all applications the same. And so that's basically the idea, I think, of an app chain, is that there's something that is extremely baked in. Then you have something like Berachain, where there is this more it's not exactly an app chain, but what they're doing is they're experimenting with how applications in the consensus layer interact with each other economically, and that's also possible when you have a framework like Cosmos.
Yeah, that's an interesting way to put things. Although this was supposed to be a question for the rapid fire round, but from that definition, do you think Unichain is an app chain?
Unichain is, in its current conception, is not an app chain, because while Uniswap is sort of branding, nothing about the Uniswap application is actually given any sort of priority in the protocol. But that could change. If you change, and the priority could be not just, they could use a stock OP stack general purpose EVM, but let's say in Rollup Boost, which is the block, the Flashbots' block builder framework, you put special rules for Uniswap transactions in, or you bake in some sort of MEV resistant and liquidity system based in, then you can sort of evolve. So general purpose, you can launch a general purpose chain. It can evolve into an app chain. You can have almost every app chain that has launched has added general purpose features. I don't think all of this stuff validates or invalidates the app chain hypothesis. Ultimately, what we're all just trying to do is find products that users want.
That makes sense. Also, one more term that goes mostly around with app chains is modularity, right? So what do you think that stands for, and are there features which monolithic system can just handle, and that's why we need such a modular system?
So modularity is a concept that Ekram from Celestia came up with, and Nick White and I kind of shoved down everyone's throat, and now you've all been gaslit into believing modularity is real. So after gaslighting everyone that modularity is real, does modularity actually mean anything concrete? What we have found is that there are patterns that this industry has followed. There is, for some reason, there's a thing called an L1 premium that sometimes appears, where things that are perceived to have an ecosystem, and sometimes you can pursue that L1 premium. So a lot of builders will just be hey, it's better to be an L1 from a token valuation point of view than it is just an app on another app chain. And so that drives certain people. The perception of modularity is, okay, if we've been through, we start with the first altcoin boom, altchain boom of 2013 was all kinds of different proof of work chains. Then we had the altcoin booms of 2017 with all the ETH killer L1s. We had the 2021 era where like the L1 rotation of capital. All of this stuff has been going on for a long time. What modularity is trying to do is trying to take this trend that we've been seeing in the industry and turn it into some sort of robust, reusable set of components, rather than subjecting users to like an unreliable sort of ad hoc system for everything. So the idea of IBC was, rather than like every single person writing their own bridge, you could have a standardized bridging system. And it does appear the industry is sort of converging towards like a small number of bridging systems. So that would allow things. So things with data availability is, if we can reduce the number of consensus systems that we have to manage, maintain, scale in the world, because consensus systems are hard, we can have we can have just a small number of data availability layers that like everything plugs into. And that can also take these like sort of long-running industry trends and make them more valuable. I think that there's just never going to be a change from the fact that as the ambition of a builder rises, they eventually are like, I want to build my own sovereign block space.
Makes sense. So now that we have established all the things, like how does like the current app chain ecosystem look like from like a Cosmos perspective, and then like moving on to like a more roll-up based approach? Like what's...
Well, I mean, I think that one of the biggest things is that, a long time ago, 2020, 2021 era, I would be doing talks with like Anatoly or Ilya from Near, and we would be having these debates. App chains versus monolithic blockchains, Cosmos versus Solana, Cosmos versus Near. Okay, what does this stuff all look like today? Like, there are network extensions on Solana, which no one has a concrete definition of what they are, but they are there's like people are building sovereign block space that closely interoperates with Solana. People, like the Celestia ecosystem is booming. People are still building very ambitious projects on top of the Cosmos SDK. You see game developers who are like, so in addition to like sort of ambitious blockchain teams, one thing that we've seen over and over again is game studios for some reason always want their own chain. There's just like, no one really knows why, but because mostly what games want is yes, you have these like experimental fully on-chain games, but mostly what games want is they want 100,000 NFTs and airdrop. And why they need their own blockchain for this, we don't know, but they want their own blockchain. And so, and that ecosystem is, Avalanche has really made an enormous amount of inroads in that. You have Saga, which is also focused on feeding that demand. So you have this complex soup of app chains budding off in various places in the ecosystem. As things like intent-based bridging has gotten better, like the actual usability of these things are getting better. The whole question is in a world of app chains, could we get the usability to the point where it's somewhat comparable to monolithic chains? And we're not there yet, but we're like asymptotically getting close.
That makes sense. Also, just following up on that, I think we were having a conversation about it backstage. Like you mentioned, there are two important things for the app chains, which is like decentralized block space as well as order flow. So would you want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, so the question is, when you build many blockchains are, so much of their economy is driven by one ultra successful application. So like the Solana example is pump.fun, right? You have one application, it is driving an overwhelming amount of the demand for block space. Order flow, order flow is basically users' transactions. the sort of information that a user wants to buy, sell, leverage, short, long, short a given asset, is the way information gets injected into markets. So when we talk about what is valuable about blockchains, is blockchains in their most fundamental sense always represent some sort of marketplace. And that order flow is a big part of the value that an application generates is the ability to elicit order flow from users, creators, et cetera. Like, you think of like, what is the order flow on pump.fun? It's that Mudeng is a meme and that we were able to pump the meme, and drive a lot of it, attention. That's the order flow. That value is leaking today through the Solana, emanates from pump.fun, but then moves through Solana dexes, Jito, MEV searchers on Solana, all of these components. If you are a centralized exchange, you actually get to internalize a lot of that. You internalize it through trading fees, you internalize it through internal market makers, all of these things allow you to sort of internalize this value capture, this value that is being generated from order flow. Decentralized systems tend to leak it instead to a bunch of parties that have not necessarily aligned interests. The idea of an app chain is that if you can succeed on onboarding your users to the app chain, you can move all of the value into an economically aligned system that can drive the growth of your system. And you see something like Hyperliquid or DYDX really trying to do this.
But like a natural follow-up on that would be, okay, order flow is important, but wouldn't that, in a state of multiple app chains and all, and you mentioned that the order flow is the most important thing there, wouldn't fragmentation cause an issue there? Because it's already hard to onboard people, and then you tell them that, okay, hey, half of it goes here, half of that goes there, and then there's so much chaos.
Yeah, as long as what users see as their primary interface is, as long as interfaces are strongly tied to a single blockchain, you will, it's easier to be, it's like you achieve more growth and more revenue just by the accessibility of being on a chain that everyone else is on. But after I gaslit everybody on modularism, I gaslit everyone on chain abstraction. At the end of last year, I was like, okay, let's make this chain abstraction meme a thing. I think I have succeeded in inception across the industry. Vitalik made this blog post that about what wallets should look like, and it was just full of chain abstraction features. So I'm like, cool, successfully gaslit Vitalik, who was extremely resistant. There's a panel of me and Vitalik in Korea in April, and he's like, I don't believe in chain abstraction. What are you talking about? And then end of the year, his blog post is like, let's just put intents in everything. I think the question has been for builders, and we've made an fairly insane amount of progress, honestly, building a set of technologies that achieve this chain abstraction goal. You can trade an asset, you can, at this point, moving between Cosmos, Solana, Ethereum, L2s is pretty easy, pretty fast. The hardest part is that you have to compose different interrupt things for different things. So you're okay, I can use this set of things from going to Solana to Cosmos or Solana to Ethereum land, but then I need to use a cross or IBC. We don't have the interfaces that unify these things, but it's all coming. You have things like Near's chain signatures. You have the Polaris from the Osmosis team. Squid just launched something. All these teams are launching things, and as they get just plugged into the front end of applications, users will eventually just not really need to have all of this brain damage of seeing all of these different chains, all of this different fragmentation.
But just counterintuitively on that, obviously chain abstraction can connect all of these things, but don't you think that's would that be bad for app chains? Because let's say tomorrow we have like a God blockchain which solves all, which doesn't care about, throws the trilemma out of the box, is very fast, efficient, doesn't have don't requirements. So in that case, like wouldn't all applications would stick to that God chain or like multiple God chains, and then chain abstraction would just connect them, and then there's no requirement of app chains anymore?
So I have seen numerous pitches from different teams, the SWE research team, Solana team, over the years who are like, I will build this God blockchain because there will be no, like all trade-offs are imaginary, like we can do this. I think that there's two things. Like one is there's a question of like, what is the social trade-off, right? Humans naturally want to congregate around their own tribe, and tribes tend to sort of fragment and split off. And if you make the cost of exit cheap, like fragmentation will always be there. So I think that the natural tendency for humans and their AIs is to actually fragment, not to unify into a single system. And so that's like one aspect of this reality. The other question that I think is kind of, and like Anatoly's argument has always been, okay, if you do all of this, you reduce the latency at which information is aggregated across the system. But you also have this like fundamental question of like off-chain solvers, market makers can do the information aggregation internally on their own centralized systems, and then price and quote on many different chains on many different environments, and that allows for efficient aggregation of information. So I don't think that there's like a single economic forcing function that actually forces everything into a single system. There are advantages to building on more mature systems. There are enormous points of friction of launching your own app chain. Andre has talked about all of the challenges, all of the money they've had to spend to launch Sonic. But like I think the trends in the industry is to like for these costs to go down, not up.
Got it. Also, I just saw this tweet last night. It said, like, it was by reasoning that who needs roll-up interop if base has 95% of the users? So, do you think we should still care or just not, just give up, or like, what should be done there?
So, I think the question is, if base has 95% of the users, but does it have 90% of the apps, 95% of the apps? And I think a lot of people are prototyping and like building early versions of new apps on base. But I don't think, just like Ethereum before it and Solana before it, like users and value don't stay on your one chain. They like onboard there, maybe it becomes their home, but then they go out and explore. And so, I think that like, as apps mature in these new environments, as we discover what's possible, people just reliably come across up against some limit of what a general purpose environment will happen for them, whether it's decentralization of their decentralization of their order book or decentralization of their Oracle or everything. And base isn't going to cater to every single use case. Like, I don't foresee a place, for instance, where or it seems unlikely at this point that, for instance, like base would add like a extremely low latency price oracle to their stack, but an app chain can do that.
So, like right now, is there any practical threat to app chains? Like, or could there be something which would make app chains obsolete, or it's just gonna stay there?
The main thing is there is some future where you get the benefits of an app, like you can get more of the benefits of an app chain without making it so obviously a separate chain. Like right now when we make an app chain, like the chain itself is still like, you experience a lot of friction points around that chain itself, and like the chain is like very present. You could have a thing where it's like, okay, like you have a monolithic blockchain, it has multiple concurrent proposers, you have a restaking protocol, some fraction of the block space on that gets assigned to a certain application. It is possible that like you sort of see more of a synthesis of app chains. And like you see this with Near and today, where Near has like a general purpose smart contract environment layered on top of the ability to launch EVM chains, layered on top of a chain abstraction system. And so in theory, like a fully mature system can subsume a lot of the use cases. And obviously, I think ZK stuff also blurs this line quite a bit.
Got it. Yeah, as we approach towards the end, I think let's switch gears up, and now I'm going to ask you questions, and you have to answer them like in like one sentence or so. And yeah, so this could be interesting. Give your spicy takes on that. It's just like a rapid fire thing.
Yeah, let's go.
Yeah. Why is Ethereum ecosystem obsessed with Solana?
Uh, Jealousy around focus.
I see. Do we need alt VMs?
Do we need all the games? Unknown.
Okay. So if the Solana virtual machine is so great, why wrap it in a roll-up instead, and why not just use Solana directly?
Sovereign block space.
Okay. Is parallelism overrated?
Parallelism. Is parallelism overrated? Parallelism is more of a meme than a reality.
Could you elaborate on that a bit?
Yeah, okay. So the idea of, so there's actually like, so when you like are building an alt VM or like any sort of execution environment, there's like a ton of different trade-offs around like state access rules, what the fee marketplace looks like, storage costs. And as a practical matter, depending on what your workload is, being able to execute transactions in parallel may or may not matter. You can, you have an app chain like Penumbra, which batches all of the trades and effectively executes them in parallel. In a block, you have Solana, which has like one opinionated take on like sort of read-write locks. Pricing in Solana's current fee marketplace is really inefficient. So ultimately, it's like Solana happened. Solana ended up being really good at this use case of having 100,000 Uniswap V2 style full range pools for meme coins that get touched every few seconds, or that like, especially like where sort of the fat head of that gets touched every few seconds. It ended up being like very good for a specific application architecture. And then people saw that and they're like, okay, parallelism, meme, all of this stuff. There are no general purpose EVMs today that can do this 100,000 Uniswap V2 pools use case, which turns out to be an important use case that there's product market fit. So now you have all of these builders, Mega ETH, Monad, Nibiru, Say, blah, 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 who are all like, okay, we like realize that this 100,000 Uni V2 pool category is important and meaningful, and we'll raise money to like expand the number of the availability of this capability in the developer ecosystem. But parallelism is the meme that we have layered on top of that like, degens will then bid the tokens on based on parallelism as a narrative.
Got it. Yeah, cool. Your favorite ecosystem?
My favorite ecosystem. I think there's going to be some really exciting stuff. I can't leak all of it, but there's some really exciting stuff happening in Cosmos that'll be announced next week. We are actually I've been like sort of memeing this whole Ethereum is currently experiencing a lot of the challenges that we've experienced in Cosmos and repeating a lot of my mistakes in trying to fix those problems. But we're taking another swing at it, coming in a completely different direction. So I think that there is like there continues to be like Cosmos tends to, for better or worse, live a little bit in the future of every other blockchain ecosystem, and we're going to probably do that again.
Got it. In one word, least favorite ecosystem?
What is my least favorite ecosystem? I still don't understand why people care about Cardano.
All right. The most overhyped narrative of this cycle?
Oh, I haven't updated this thought process recently, so I don't know that I've picked it over like what narrative I think is actually completely over here. I don't think we've even figured out what the narrative of this cycle is. Is it AI agents? Is it?
I think it's, yeah, it is AI agents.
Yeah, but I'm bullish AI agents.
I think shitcoins is like,
I mean, I'm also like meme coins aren't going away. So yeah, I don't know. I don't have an opinion there.
okay, final two questions. Defend the thesis every app will become a chain
Defend the thesis that every app will become a chain.
in one sentence.
Value accrual.
Negate the thesis that every app will become an app chain.
No one knows what an app is.
Thank you so much, everyone. It was wonderful talking with you, Zaki, and yeah.